Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm talking about The Lair, written and directed by Neil Marshall. It came out sometime earlier in 2022. Obviously, this is a late review, but it is available as of now to stream on Shudder exclusively. And it's about a military pilot played by Charlotte Kirk who happens across a bunker in Afghanistan where it turns out there's some very unsavory things taking place to create monsters that are dumb, full of teeth, and looking for any excuse to bite something. Or are they more human than they actually appear? Well, I'll leave that for you to find out. Based on the 33% on Rotten Tomatoes and the general consensus that I seem to see amongst my peers and just other viewers, it looks like I'm in the minority saying this, but I personally loved this movie. I thought it was a blast. This is one of those cases where I see all of the same flaws that everyone else is talking about, and yet I somehow managed to like the movie like 10 times more than anyone else seemed to. No accounting for taste on my channel, I guess. Is the characterization of everyone minimal? With a capital M. Is it derivative? Absolutely. There is not a damn thing in this movie that you haven't seen in a million other movies. Is the dialogue clunky and dumb? Yes, this whole movie, or at least a good part of it anyways, in terms of its dialogue, feels like it was written by an 8-year-old. And yet, unlike pretty much everybody else, my thumb is up and definitely not down with this one. This feels like the script for one of those B-tier Alien ripoffs that they were pumping out in the early 80s. It just didn't get made until now. So if everything about this movie just screams disposable B film, why did I love it so much? I think in all seriousness, the credit here has to go to Neil Marshall's direction. This movie's very tightly directed, it has a great pace to it, it's got energy to spare, and it's got one or two action scenes that in my opinion are actually pretty ingenious. And Charlotte Kirk establishes herself as a great lead for a movie like this right off the bat in her first scene, where she actually ends up using an insurgent's dead body as a human shield while she's rolling on the ground trying to pick off all these guys who have her surrounded. As soon as that started happening, I remember I actually sort of scribbled in my notes, wow, this girl's a badass. And Charlotte Kirk, who was also the lead in Neil Marshall's previous movie, The Reckoning, I tell you, if this was her audition to play Lara Croft in an upcoming Tomb Raider movie, I think she got the job done. She's capable, attractive, very no-nonsense. Yeah, you don't really learn a whole heck of a lot about her, but quite frankly, I don't care what happened to this woman before this happened. I just care that it happened, and now she's dispatching these monsters in all sorts of badass ways. Really, for what is essentially a B movie, the action choreography here is surprisingly solid. And it's also, even though this is a movie that is dealing with aliens, at least a little bit realistic and grounded in terms of the abilities of its human characters, particularly in scenes where the soldiers have to fight the insurgents. Every single one of those feels like an action scene that physically could actually occur in the real world and isn't just a fabrication of a movie. Now, the monsters themselves aren't anything that impressive in terms of their design. They're essentially just xenomorphs with human-shaped heads. But this movie's less concerned with making its monsters mysterious and scary, and more concerned with finding creative ways to put them in a situation where they're making life even harder for our heroes than it already is. The monsters are the main threat here, but they're not the only thing that the heroes have to be worrying about at any given point. This movie kind of goes the Predator route of giving the characters an intense predicament that they have to solve before the monster even shows up at all. I would even concede that the movie probably follows the Predator formula a little bit too closely. I mean, the basic idea of it starting off like a military thriller and ending up feeling like a sci-fi monster thriller is fine, but there is one monologue here that is such a shameless ripoff of the character Anna's monologue in Predator that I'm surprised that someone didn't get sued for copyright. I mean, it's not a word-for-word ripoff or anything, but it is the same kind of monologue told the same way for the same purpose. I know they say genius steals, but come on guys, you can do a little bit better than that. On the plus side, there's a very good use of gore throughout the movie. In fact, there's one scene that kind of made me chuckle where it keeps cutting back to a guy who's clearly had his jaw just about torn off by one of the monsters, and the medic is sitting there trying to put him back together and keeps telling him all these reassuring things like, oh, you're gonna be okay, you're a trooper, it's all right, when the guy is clearly dead. And we also get one of those token gooey monster dissection scenes, which is a total trope at this point, but it's one I can't resist. But the real money shot for me as far as the gore is concerned comes at the moment when a monster punches clean through a character's head from the back and its fist just explodes out through its mouth and teeth. It's just Awesome stuff. On the flip side, there's one moment that kind of let me down a bit where they cut away just before a character is about to meet a particularly grisly fate, but I kind of just chalk that up to one of those we ran out of budget moments. And the last big thing to talk about here, I think, is that one ingenious action sequence that I mentioned. It's a little bit harder to talk about without getting into some kind of spoilers, so before we get there, I will just refrain that despite all the negative reaction this seems to have gotten, I highly recommend this movie. Again, check your brain at the door, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. And with that, we'll just move on, however briefly, into spoiler territory. So late in the movie, after they've determined that these monsters are the result of genetic engineering by the Soviets, the characters all go back to the bunker with the intention of destroying it, only to have one of them fall all the way down the shaft, which of course means the rest of them have to rescue this person. And this involves them using the winch and hook on one of the military jeeps to create this sort of MacGyver makeshift elevator to lower the rest of the team all the way down the shaft. And as the team eventually becomes overrun and fraught with monsters attacking them from every angle imaginable, the guy managing the Jeep up top on the surface has to deal with an insurgent attack and fend that off at the same time. And all of this is against the larger backdrop of them having to pull this off before the military swoops in and bombs the whole place with the most powerful non-nuclear payload that they have. And the way the whole outlandish predicament plays out is cartoonish, berserk, contrived and over the top, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more. So on the whole, while this might not be a masterpiece, I absolutely think that this movie knows what it is and what it's doing. For the most part, because there are one or two sequences where I think it comes off a little bit more comical than perhaps Neil Marshall intended. But again, on the whole, this gave me exactly what I was looking for. It's a goofy, rock'em sock'em 80s style sci-fi thriller. And sometimes movies like that, as stupid as they are just the medicine that I am looking for, so for me, the itch was scratched. It would be nice, as some people have said, to see Neil Marshall get back to the glory days of movies like The Descent, you know, when he still actually had some more serious critical juice. But even if he just spends the rest of his career cranking out stuff like Dog Soldiers and this, I am perfectly okay with that. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks so much for watching. Look for more content really soon, and you guys all have an awesome day.